to go ahead and get started. Again, good morning to everyone, and thank you for coming. I apologize for the delay. Before we begin, I would like to introduce a couple new folks up here. This is Ken Schultz. Ken is a supervising attorney, and I don't know if you remember, but that used to be Ann Phillips' seat for many years, so Ken is now taking over that role, and Ken is a supervising attorney at OGS Legal. Welcome, Ken. Also up here is another supervising attorney, Noreen Van Dorn, also works in OGS Legal, and she's going to keep me on track today, so thank you. Before we get into the approval of the meeting minutes, I do want to reference the sign-in sheets out there. Apparently there was a column that said, would you like to speak to an agenda item? And I apologize, but as per past Procurement Council meetings, we do not have public comment. However, I do plan to address public comment at future meetings at the end of the meeting with the council. Are we ready for the meeting minutes? Okay. So we are at the approval of meeting minutes. There should be handouts in your folder. Each one separately, right? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 17th, 2015? Tom Hipchen is first. Second is Mary Beth Hefner. All in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry. Discussion? None. Okay. All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 14th, 2016? I have first motion Ron Tascarella, second from Michael Hurt. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Against? Abstentions? Thank you. And now we are up to legislative updates with Ken Schultz.
Hello all. The first legislative item is a change to the open meetings law that occurred last year, Chapter 519 of the laws of 2015. It added a provision to the open meetings law which provides that if a council maintains a website and utilizes a high-speed internet connection, the open meeting will be, to the extent practicable and within available funds, streamed on the website in real time. And so we are live streaming right now. We're in compliance with that. As to procurement-related changes, Chapter 57 of the laws of 2016 extended the Procurement Stewardship Act, Section 163 of the state finance law, for an additional 5 years. The new sunset date is June 30th, 2021. Also, some substantive changes were made to Section 163 that are notable. First, with respect to debriefings, Subdivision 9C of Section 163 was amended to put in some very specific requirements for debriefings: the who, what, where, when, or why. And there are actually very specific instructions about how the debriefing is to be conducted. And this was to address concerns about inconsistency in how debriefings were being conducted by procuring agencies. So the law now includes specific directions. It requires a notice for all unsuccessful bidders. The debriefing is to be requested by the unsuccessful bidder within 15 days. It is to be held within a reasonable time. The debriefing is to be in person unless agreed otherwise. The agency personnel at the debriefing must have been involved in the procurement, knowledgeable about it, and involved in the evaluation and selection. The debriefing must include the reasons for non-selection, a discussion of the quantitative and qualitative analysis used by the agency, the application of the selection criteria to the unsuccessful bidder's proposal, and if the debriefing is held after a final award, the reasons for the selection of the winner. The debriefing is also to include, to the extent practicable, advice on submitting a better bid in the future. There was a class at the purchasing forum, which was just concluded, that discussed these new requirements and included a mock video on how to conduct a debriefing. It was very well received, and that will be posted on the OGS website, if it isn't already. Another change to 163 was to subdivision 12, which relates to review of contracts by the state controller. And it authorizes the controller to approve an awarded contract where the contracting agency has not complied with one or more provisions of Article 11. And the conditions to that authorization are the procuring agency must determine that the non-compliance is a non-material deviation, in that there was no prejudice to actual or potential bidders or favoring, that the fairness of the procurement was not substantially affected, and that a new procurement is not in the best interests of the state, and the controller must concur in that determination. That was effective for procurements started after April 1st, 2016, as was the debriefing change. There was also a change to the procurement lobbying law sunset date, specifically sections 139J and K of the state finance law. The sunset date was extended for 5 years. The new date is July 31st, 2021. There was also a substantive change to the procurement lobbying law to the definition of the restricted period to clarify when the restricted period starts. The definition now states that the restricted period starts with the earliest posting of written notice in 3 ways: on the agency website, in a newspaper of general circulation, or in the contract reporter. This was changed to address concerns as to possible inconsistency among procuring agencies as to when the restricted period starts. That is effective for procurements started after April 1st, 2016. And due to an oversight, there are 2 identical definitions. One was changed, one was not. There are two House bills in to fix that oversight, which are being worked on. And lastly, Section 112 of the State Finance Law, Subdivision 3, was amended to increase the controller approval threshold for revenue contracts from $10,000 to $25,000. Any questions?
You look like you're going to ask one. No. You have one?
I do. I don't know. It doesn't relate to this.
Can you speak into the mic?
Should know better right by now.
Thank you.
Good morning. Ken, I just had a quick question for you as a kind of a follow-up from the previous legislative updates. In November, Anne, who is no longer with us, who's probably on a wonderful river cruise still, right? I knew that was one of the things she was doing, had indicated that in those notes it does indicate that she expects there to be some additional discussions and negotiations on possible additions to the Procurement Stewardship Act, which I believe sunsets on June 30th, if I'm correct. Is that correct, Ken?
Actually, the Procurement Stewardship Act has been extended for 5 years.
It has been already voted
It has been, yes.
by legislation?
It is in law.
And when did that get passed? Could you share that with us, please?
That was with the budget?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess my question is moot then, because at this particular time I was hoping to get some additional update. If OGS had made any recommendations, it said the Procurement Stewardship Act would be recommended for discussions and additional information brought back to the Procurement Council. But I don't believe that happened at our last meeting, and obviously the Stewardship Act has already passed, so we didn't get a chance to participate in that. Is that correct? In terms of the council's participation.
I don't think we had a meeting before it went. I think that's what happened.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ken? No? Great, thank you. Since we started late, what I'd like to do is, as we go over preferred source definitions, that's allotted 60 minutes, and there's certainly a lot to get to. I'm going to shorten it to 45 minutes so that we leave enough time for the 30 minutes for the mail fulfillment services application. So Noreen's going to go through kind of the Roberts Rule of Order and how we'll get through this, and if we're stuck on a certain definition for a while, we can certainly table it till September as well. But I thought we'll go through what we can, and then I'll have my clock up here, and after 45 minutes, we'll just let everyone know we'll move on.
So we will be following generally the Roberts Rules of Orders during this Procurement Council meeting. We've provided you with voting rules for the definitions in your packets. Sue, as chair of the Procurement Council, will identify the service offering being defined. She'll identify the page number that you can find it in, and then she's going to ask for a motion as to how you want to handle that definition. And it is up to you, the council members, to make a motion to, someone can make a motion to approve the definition as written. You can make a motion to amend the definition, table it until the next meeting, table the definition and send it to a work group for further development with the direction that it be presented at the next Procurement Council meeting. Or you can also, during the course of a motion and a discussion on a motion, you can do what's called make a motion to call the question. If the discussion goes on for too long and someone decides that they think that we've talked about it too long, they can make a motion to call the question, and if that motion is seconded, a vote will be taken on whether to end that discussion, and then a vote on the original motion will be held. Each motion that is made, whether it's to approve, amend, table, refer, must receive a second before it can be acted upon. After a motion is second, Ms. Filbon will just repeat the motion so it can be clear as to what was the motion that was made, and then she'll ask if there's any discussion on the motion. After discussion, if any has been held, a vote will be taken and must pass by a majority vote of the council members that are here today, and that's in accordance with the General Construction Law, Section 41, governing quorum and majority requirements. If during the course of a motion more than one motion is proposed, the most recent motion takes precedence over any previous motion. For example, if there is a motion made to approve a definition as written, and during the discussion somebody says, well, I really think based on the discussion we now need to amend that definition, which is what happened when we did definitions in November. First, what we're going to do is what's called basically a friendly amendment. We're going to ask the person who made the original motion to approve and just say, are you okay with changing, amending the definition? If they are, we can go forward and just do that vote. If they aren't, if they don't want to change that definition, then we have to take a vote on the motion to amend the definition. And again, that motion to amend has to be seconded before we can amend anything. Let's see. There's some instructions there. If you agree to accept the amendment, the original motion is amended. All right, that's what I just talked about. In accordance with the Open Meetings Law, the Procurement Council will continue its past practice of accepting comments only from council members during the meeting. We want you to know that in your packets, all comments that we have received to date are included in your packets, including some letters that were received, and all of them have been, even one that we received this morning, has been put in your packet already. We also wanted to let you know that in accordance with Public Officers Law Sections 74.2 and 74.3E and the State Procurement Council's adopted Code of Conduct and Guidelines, Ron Romano and Ron Tascarella have recused themselves from discussion and voting on the definitions for the service offerings that NYSID and New York State PSP respectively are approved to provide as preferred source offering. Input was obtained from both NYSID and New York State PSP during the development of the definitions. The input was taken into consideration when the proposed definitions were created. We've added symbols next to each of the definitions so that you, council members, are aware that one or both of them are unable to participate in the discussion or the vote on that particular definition due to the restrictions of the Public Officers Law and the council's Code of Conduct guidelines. So again, all comments that we have received to date are included in your packet. And I think that's it.
And Noreen's here to help us through all of that. Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Just a point of clarification for me, Sue. So the New York State Procurement Stewardship Act is already in place, and the definitions that we are going to work on and pass today will become part of that act. That's correct?
All right, no.
What's not part of the act, they're posted on the OGS website under the Procurement Council page are the preferred source guidelines and the list of
Correct.
preferred source offerings. OGS was asked last year to create definitions for the service offerings to better provide guidance to the state agencies and local governments that were obtaining services from preferred sources and make sure that there was clarity as to what was approved. So the, each of the definitions, as they're adopted, they will then be posted next to the service offering title on the list of preferred source offerings.
So these definitions act as a guide for state agencies and others who will be utilizing the preferred source methodology for purchasing of goods and services. They'll look to these definitions for their guidance as to how to move forward and what's appropriate.
Correct, correct. It's to provide clarity as to what is an approved preferred source offering. As you know, there's a list E that's on the list, and that is offerings by the preferred sources that they offer generally, but not as an approved preferred source offering. So these definitions are to provide guidance and clarity as to what is actually approved to be obtained or procured as a preferred source offering.
Right, and that is part of the State Procurement Stewardship Act.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, since there's many definitions, what we tried to do is if there was a certain category where we received minimal comments, we tried to possibly do a vote where we'll approve all three at once, but where we received a lot of comments, we'll do individual definitions per service. So for example, I'm about to do a motion for all of furniture refurbishment definitions on page 3. Ready? I gotta do my timer. May I have a motion on the definitions under the heading of furniture refurbishment defining repair, reupholstery, and stripping and refinishing, and changing the titles of repair to furniture repair, reupholstery to furniture reupholstery, and stripping and refinishing to furniture stripping and refinishing, as written on page 3.
I move to approve.
So I have a
I second.
motion from Michael Hurt and a second from Tom Hipchin at SUNY. Discussion? Any comments? Okay. All in favor? Oh, could you hold your hands a little longer? I think they're counting over there. Oh. Against?
Again, no, or again, yes?
No, just against. Abstentions? None. Okay, thank you. May I have a motion on the definitions under the heading of messenger services, defining foot messenger, package and document pickup and delivery, and vehicular messenger services as written on page 4.
I make the motion.
Ron Tascarella makes a motion.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Oh. Christine McCann seconds. Any discussion?
Just clarity, it says that Ron,
I'm sorry.
I keep doing that. Just for point of clarity, it does say at the bottom that Ron has recused himself from this vote. Is that not correct, or?
Is it? No,
Only where marked.
only where it's marked,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarity.
There's 2 different marks.
Right.
Might help if I put my glasses on, huh?
No further discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of warehousing distribution and changing the title of warehousing distribution to warehousing, storage, and distribution, non-food, as written on page 5?
I have a motion.
Tom Hipchen is motions. Mary Beth, you second. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of data entry as written on page 6? I have a motion from Mary Beth Hefner and a second from Andy Burchard. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of CD replication as written on page 7?
I just have a question, a motion to discuss.
Can you just
Right?
discuss?
Is that?
Sure.
Okay. Just to clarify, I know that OSC had brought up the issue of the location of the service, and it's been stricken from the definition here that it could maybe performed at the customer's or at preferred source. So my understanding is that would be part of form, function, and utility, correct? In terms of if SUNY needed it done at the location, preferred source would have to do it at SUNY's location, right? Or we could say if you wanted to do it at the preferred source location, it could be, but it's all under form, function, and utility.
Correct. If you look at, on page 7, OGS's response, we indicated that yes, we agreed that a customer determines where any service is going to be performed as part of their form, function, and utility. I mean, they can't do that to avoid, just like you can't pick who your contractor is going to be. You can't have your form, function, and utility so narrow to avoid or steer things. But that form, function, and utility determination of where a service is performed is left to the agency.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that that's how it's, that's where it's covered. Okay.
Yep. Right.
Oh. Any motion?
Motion to approve?
Okay, Tom Hipchen motions. To approve, sorry. Is there a second? Andy Burchard seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? We have 2 abstentions, Ron Tascarella and Michael Hurt. Okay, thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of transcription as written on page 8? Okay, Mary Beth Hefner motions. Second, Ron Romano. Any discussion? Oh, he can't. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Right. Sorry about that. Okay. Andy Burchard seconds. Any discussion? None. All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion on removing the heading of resource management as written on page 9? Again, this is not the definition. So the heading resource management is not a term typically used with garbage pickup and recycling services. Procurement Council staff recommends the titles of garbage pickup and recycling become standalone titles and do not need to be categorized under the heading of resource management.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, still need a motion. Thank you. Tom Hipshin motions. Second, Andy Burchard. Any discussion? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I vote? Oh, gosh.
We should vote.
Oh,
I'm here.
thank you. All in favor? Against? Abstention? Michael Hurt. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. May I have a motions on the definitions of garbage pickup and recycling as written on page 9? I am Mary Beth Hefner as motions. May I have a second? A second. Christine McCann. Any discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of inventory control services as written on page 10? Ron Tascarella motions. Mary Beth Hefner seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. May I have a motion on the definition of secure document destruction as written on page 11? Oh, wait, Jerry Minot Sherman motions. Is there a second? Sonia Lindell seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstention? Motion passes. May I have a motion on the definitions of electronics recycling as written on page 12? Jerry Minot Sherman motions. Second, Ron, were you seconding? Ron Tascarella? Ron Tascarella seconds. Any discussion? Michael?
Could I get some clarity as to why the word after was inserted? Equipment after all data has been removed. Was there an issue with that?
It was included that way, and it's highlighted and bolded as a reminder to all governmental entities they are supposed to remove all data before they give away, before they're recycling their equipment. So it was to, again, it's trying to give guidance to the government entities that are obtaining this service that they need to get that data off before they give their electronics to somebody to recycle.
Thank you. I was just curious. It wasn't a responsibility of the preferred source to take responsibility for removing data.
It is not, but then it does say that, once collected, we would hope that, anyone would look at it and make sure that there's not any data on it and would remove it.
But there's no obligation to do that. The only reason I bring that up, Noreen, as an attorney, if there's some proprietary data that doesn't get handled appropriately and is on a drive that doesn't get cleared and ends up in nefarious hands, who has that responsibility? Is it the preferred source or the state entity that was supposed to do that after? just that point of clarity. And I
Right.
know it may seem like a small thing, and it is a small thing until it actually happens to a preferred source, and somebody's social security number or pertinent information is not properly deleted. So I know it's a definition, but I'm bringing it up because I think it's important that we just kind of clarify that.
If you'd like, you can ask that, you can make a motion to table this, to go to a work group for further description in the definition rather than, appearing, or rather than going forward with it as it is right now. I mean, I can't make a guarantee to you as to who or is who not responsible or liable for something. So, those really, there's multiple choices that you can have for making a motion on this definition today.
Yeah, I had noted this earlier, and unfortunately didn't get a chance to draft up any language. I don't have a problem with it moving forward. It's not something that we docs becomes very much involved in, but I would have a concern for anyone that is a preferred source that found themselves in a situation where that data, given these times and what happens with data when it's mishandled or misused, could be extremely expensive. So if it could go back to a work group, that's fine. I don't want to create any, difficulties for moving this whole process forward. So
I guess I would have concerns as well because of just insurance questions in terms of a breach of information and who's responsible for that. So I guess I would make a motion that would be not tabled, but to be sent to a work group to discuss.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to table this back to a work group for further clarification. Motion by Tom Hipchen, second by Michael Hurt. Any further discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, great. So we are going to skip over information and records conversion management to include data imaging and microfilm and microfiche as written on page 13.
Excuse me, if I may.
Sorry, did I read too many? Okay, so we're just tabling the data imaging services for back to the work group for further clarification. So I won't go into a motion on those, but we will address microfilm. We'll do these individually. Okay, so.
Was there a motion on that data tabling that, or is that something that?
Am I motioning to the table, or is it just? We're just automatically tabling those.
I like the automatic.
Okay.
Excuse me, if I may. I know I asked you to do that. There are a couple I've changed my mind on, and that definition's fine. So if
Okay,
you
wait a
want to
minute.
proceed, go ahead.
Okay, so just disregard everything I just said. May I have a motion on the definitions under the heading of Information and Records Conversion Management, defining imaging services, microfilm, and microfiche as written on page 13?
Could I get some clarification from Ron as to why he requested this be tabled now that it's being moved forward again? So I'd like to get some clarity as to why we're going back and forth.
May I speak? I had wanted clarification on the warehousing portion that was added at the end. Typically in an imaging project, you have the files left at the end and you have to warehouse those until the procuring agency gives you direction. So that's what, and this definition prohibits that, or does not include it.
So Ron, just so I'm clear, you're saying that the service, as I see it here, does not include the warehousing and storage of data conversion once you've gotten those documents converted.
Right, according to this definition, right.
And you would like that in there, or you don't want that in there, or?
I need to just jump in for a second. Ron needs to recuse himself from the discussion. Your initial question, we allowed that because you just asked, why did he ask us to remove it? But having that discussion, and he has now said, that we can go forward with it. Plus, there is a definition for warehousing that's part of the group of preferred source offerings.
Right, that was going to be my question. So if, if the warehousing has been removed, it would just be two separate services
Correct.
provided by a preferred source? One, okay.
Right, right. One of the struggles that the Office of General Services has oftentimes with doing the price reasonableness review of the applications is trying to figure out the pricing. So having them split out and figuring out what is data imaging versus what is warehousing, then
Okay.
that will make review, and it's also, you know, provides more clarity to the authorized user as to what they're being charged.
Okay.
So the warehousing is going to appear in another section then?
Yeah, it's on page.
Is that page 14?
No, I think we already voted on that.
We just approved it a moment ago, I
On
think.
page 5.
Thank you, Tom.
Warehousing, not food.
Right, right.
And Sue, just to clarify, we are voting on all three, the microfilm and microfiche also, or just the first part?
I did all three at once,
Okay, just want to make sure.
but if you'd like to do them individually, we can.
No, I just wanted to make sure I was
Okay.
voting on the right thing.
All right. So there's still oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
So just for clarification, so again, right now, if we have data imaging services provided, there's a time in which the originals are copied, but then they're maintained at the facility until they return them to us. So, I mean, again, is that something I'm going to have to get a separate price? I mean, again, there's always going to be a time, like they only come once every 2 weeks or once a week, so obviously there's going to be a period of time in which they're going to be maintaining some records that they've already scanned. So does that mean that I have to then get a separate price on them keeping those records after they've been scanned before they're returned? Because they're not returning them the next day. You know what I mean? There's a period of time.
Yeah, I don't think we were envisioning that. I think, you know, like if it's a week or two before pickup, that's fine. I think if it's some of the cases are, can you store my originals for a year, is more of like a warehousing function. But if it's, oh, I can't pick it up for, you know, 2 to 4 weeks, I don't think we see all that as any type of warehousing. It's more temporary storage.
So do you envision I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
So do you envision then this package, or if it were serviced as a service document conversion, would include the warehousing as a separate line item, or could it be possibly included in the price quote for that document conversion or document handling?
I see, well, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, if it's long-term warehousing versus temporary storage during the course of the project, that long-term warehousing needs to be separately identified, and it could be in one application. It's just two service offerings within the same application.
Okay, now I understand why Ron may have wanted this tabled. I would be very comfortable having something more clearly defined as to what that is, but you know, I certainly don't want to make a motion to table it if you know, NYSED would like this to move forward. But I can understand what that issue is. It could be kind of tricky as you're trying to price services. For a small job, it's not a big deal, but if you've got a contract that's extended for a significant period of time, you may have to store those records for a significant period of time, and there would be a cost involved, and you'd need to work that into your pricing. So
Well, I think if it's during the project, that's considered just storage as part of the project. I think what we're envisioning as warehousing is, could you store my records up to a year in, like, really, like maybe your warehouse or in a storage facility?
well, that is a reality. There are a number of state agencies that have literally millions of documents, and even though those documents are converted, counsel for some of those agencies, who I've spoken to, have said, yeah, the judge might want to see the hard copies. Let's keep those around a little bit longer.
Absolutely. You can put both on an application. You can put the application in for data imaging and warehousing and price them appropriately.
Well,
Just would want to see a preferred source get stuck with a bunch of paper and not have the funds to be able to handle them properly, and have responsibility for secured documents for an extended period of time can get pretty expensive. So,
Agreed. Yeah, then I put in warehousing.
I guess the question is, do we need to identify here where that cutoff is in terms of what's long-term? Because it's not identified in the warehousing definition. So or I don't want to say a month or something like that, but do we need to have some timing identified
Feel
in?
like this include, I don't know.
Perhaps, Tom, the last sentence that's underlined, this service does not include warehousing. Perhaps a period of time could be put in there. Long-term, even something as basic as long-term. I know that's a little nebulous, but just something that kind of identifies, what that would be. I don't know how you would do a large contract with document conversion without holding on to those documents for some kind of period of time. So if that, I agree with Tom that
Right.
maybe just that one bit of language in there might help clarify that and make it a lot simpler.
So would you like to send it back to a work group?
I move this be tabled and sent back to a work group to make some language adjustments.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to send data imaging services back to a work group by Michael Hurt and second by Alexander Green. All in favor? Against? Abstention? Motion passes. So how do you want to handle microfilm and microfiche? Okay. Okay, so, all right. So we'll just do them separately, you want to? All right, we're going to do microfilm and microfiche separately. So may I have a motion on the definition under Information and Records Conversion Management defining microfilm?
Moved.
Changing
Oh,
the-
and changing the title to microfilm conversion. Andy Burchard motions? Second? I can't read her name. I can't see her name, I'm sorry. Oh, Lisa, thank you. Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
So just, hello? Okay. So looking at how the discussion, the back and forth on data imaging, just looking for clarity on how microfilm and microfiche are attached or related to the data imaging and whether there's any, if there could be any issues, discrepancies in what that means in the processing of microfilm and fiche. The same issues that popped up, do they apply?
They're separate, so I'm not sure if they apply.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Oh, Dave?
So I mean, would we have the same issue though with a microfilm, microfiche of the originals that are being maintained or stored? Is that would be a similar type issue?
Oh, go ahead.
Based on the applications that we've seen, and we're not seeing very much of a conversion of documents these days to microfilm and microfiche, but the issue of storage, warehousing, keeping the original documents, we haven't seen that to date. But again, if you'd like these sent back to a work group to explore that further, that could certainly, that could be a motion that we would make.
Right. I mean, again, I would think it would just be consistent between the three types. I mean, I know the other ones aren't used as much, but if we're going to define the storage, might as well define them for all of them.
Is just 1 second before we move on, or potentially move on with a revised motion. Is that a result of microfilm and microfiche being more out of date, or a technology that's not as used as frequently as it was, say, 20, 30 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
But currently, we have a motion to approve the definition of microfilm. So we either can take a vote on that, or we could have someone make a motion to table, and we could take a vote on that, if that's how the council would like to proceed.
It seems like the...
Lisa, can you use this?
Sorry.
Thanks.
It seems like the microfilm and the microfiche are capturing the definition but not defining the service. Whereas those two, microfilm and microfiche, fall into data imaging service. So the service is the act of doing it, and which is where the concern for the storage is. whereas the microfilm and microfiche is just defining what that is. So from that perspective, maybe defining storage is unnecessary. Just one
Right,
take on it.
okay. So does anyone want to make a motion to do something other than approve it at this time, or should we go
I'll make a
forward?
motion to table it to a work group.
We have a second for that motion? Yeah, Michael Hurt was the second. Mary Beth Hefner made the original motion. Any further discussion on the motion for tabling?
All in favor? Against? Ron Tascarello. And any abstentions? So we are tabling microfilm and microfiche, or do you want a separate vote on that one? Okay. Good. We'll do these separately. I'll do them separately. Okay. May I have a motion on the definition under the heading of food services defining food warehousing, storage and distribution service? Just that definition alone. Jerry Minot Sherman motions. Mary Beth Hefner seconds. Any discussion? Go ahead, Michael.
I note that the last sentence says, "This service shall not include obtaining, sourcing, procuring items on behalf of the customer." That's a bit confusing to me, particularly if you're providing food services. Your customers do define the food, and in some cases do require obtaining, sourcing, and procuring items that are special to that particular customer base. So I'm not quite sure why that's there. I think that should be stricken.
Oh, go ahead.
The only response that I can provide to you at this time, well, I guess there's two responses. One is, it is NYSID that is approved to offer this service. NYSID did not object to the definition as it is. But you can, again, seeking to strike something from the definition would need a motion to amend the current motion that we have to approve it. So you can make that motion to amend and strike something. Again, you can, it's up to you how you want to handle it.
Well, I'll clarify my motion. I motion to amend and strike the last sentence in food service. That paragraph or sentence that says, "This service shall not include obtaining, sourcing, and procuring items on behalf of the customer."
For that motion to amend to go forward, we would need a second.
And just to clarify, this is not food service?
Right, this is just, it's the food warehousing, storage, and distribution service. It's not food preparation, what have you. There being no second, we're not going to move forward on that amendment, and we're back to any further discussion on the motion to approve the definition as written.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Against? Abstention? Michael Hurt. Great. Definition passes. Do you want to address meal delivery? Okay. We're skipping over meal preparation, delivery, and saving that till September.
Excuse me, if I may again, why don't we take this up now rather than I remove my.
Oh, okay. All
Let's
right.
do it.
Disregard what I said, number 2. May I have a motion on the definition under the heading of food service for meal preparation and delivery as written on page 14? Mary Beth Hefner, motions? Second? Oh, sorry. Christine beat you.
That's fine.
Christine, seconds. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Against? Abstention? Motion passes. We're just doing one, right? That we skipped? Okay. May I have a motion on the definition of inbound teleresponse and fulfillment and changing the title to inbound teleresponse and fulfillment to call center services dash inbound as written on page 15. Ron Romano motions? To approve?
Motion to approve, yes.
Motion to approve, second? Okay. Charlotte Briere seconds. Oh, sorry, Charlotte Davis. Any discussion?
Yeah, I noticed that it includes reference to where the location, where the service is performed, as opposed to others that did not have that. Service may be performed at the preferred source location or customer location. So, is that just missed? I mean, I just want to be consistent with other.
Right, it doesn't restrict it, it would still be part of the form, function, and delivery, or I'm sorry.
Utility.
For function and utility determination. So you can make a motion to amend the definition, to strike that, or you can just leave it as is.
Well, I would make a motion to strike services may be performed, just to be consistent with other definitions.
So we have a motion right now to strike the sentence, services may be performed at the preferred source or customer location. That's on the table. We would need a second for that motion for it to be advanced. We have it. Dave Russo seconds it. All in favor? Any opposed? Charlotte opposes. Anyone else oppose? Alexander, did you oppose?
Yes.
And Jerry Minot Sherman opposed. Any abstentions? Andy Bouchard.
Can I request that the motion be recalled? Is that appropriate right now?
How many approved? They're counting. We have 10 in favor to amend it, therefore that motion did pass. There now could be, if you want to, you could make a motion to recall that and reconsider, if that's what you seek.
So motion to recall and reconsider?
You're making that motion?
Yes.
Okay. And we would need a second on that.
Oh, Michael?
Michael Hurt is giving a second. And we have a,
We needed a second so we could have the discussion.
Right.
I wanted to ask the question, why?
correct. That's what we need to understand. So, Alex, we need to understand why you want to recall that motion.
So my question is, how does this impact agencies' ability to create their own call centers? So for example, DOL has their call center. DTF has their own call center that they have created and support based on their own staff. In initiatives that I've worked on that have been multi-agency initiatives, we've been able to utilize DOL's call center, we've been able to utilize DTF, bring those forces together, for example, the Exploited Worker Task Force or the Nail Salon Industry Enforcement Task Force, and centralize those resources. Moving forward in the future, say if per a governor's initiative or the needs for an individual agency to create a call center or to hire on, how does this definition impact that? Will their only resource to procure these services be through the preferred source?
You don't, state agencies can always perform the services that they need to perform with their own staff. It is only when the agency decides that they don't have sufficient staff to perform that, either themselves or in cooperation with other state agencies, that then they would need to go to the preferred sources. Which is, right now, this is an approved preferred source currently being offered by New York State PSP. So again, it won't affect the agencies using their own staff whatsoever.
So,
Actually, the definition, what it would affect is that IT would be, right now, IT might fall under the definition that is currently on the books. Now we've made it that is out of the definition. So if we were to go out and do a call center for IT services, under the current definition, we'd have to use the preferred source. If it met form, function, and utility, the new definition, we would not be required.
Right.
Correct.
Just a point of clarification, we have no definitions currently as to, whether IT is or is not included.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So there is a definition now on the table, right?
Yes,
That it's not, that is excluded,
correct.
right? That's what I'm saying, how it would impact us.
Right, so it would be excluded, so you wouldn't go to a preferred source before you did a competitive bid. But again, you wouldn't go to a preferred source or competitive bid unless you couldn't do it with your own staff.
Right.
So you mentioned earlier that it wouldn't apply if an agency was using their own staff, but if an agency was using staff from another agency, so if we use taxes, hotline, that we don't need to go to a preferred source rather than use another agency,
Right,
another
agencies
agency's
can-
resource also.
Right, agencies can use other agencies. That is always the goal of government, which is to use the staff that we have currently before it is outsourced in any manner. So is there any more discussion on the motion to recall the motion that we just had to amend the definition? All right, we need to take now, because it was seconded, we need to take a vote on whether or not you want to recall that prior motion to amend. So all in favor of recalling the prior motion to amend the definition as it appears on page 15. All in favor of recalling? All right. So, you're right, we're recalling the prior amended vote.
Okay.
All right, so anyone opposed to recalling the prior?
Opposed.
1, 2,
Be
3, 4.
basically going back to the original definition, right?
No. So let's, what
Okay.
this motion is right now is you just voted to amend the definition.
Right.
We haven't voted yet to approve the amended definition.
Okay.
We only made a motion to amend the definition. And now there's a motion to recall that amendment.
Right, so I need to vote against.
You can vote any way you'd like. So we need to know who would like to recall the vote that amended the definition as it is written. Who is you? Okay.
That's the motion.
That's the
Yes,
motion that you
yes,
made. All right, Alex votes to approve it. Is there any,
To approve the recall.
yeah, that's to approve the recall. Anyone against recalling that prior vote? All right, we have Tom, Mary Beth, Jerry, Dave, Sonia, Charlotte, and Michael Hurt. And, sorry. Oh, and Lisa Brooks, because there's another Lisa, right? Right. Any abstentions? Andy Bouchard. Okay, so we will not be recalling that, but we still now need a motion to approve the amended definition, which is as it appears on page 15, without the sentence of services may be performed at the preferred source or customer location. So we would need a motion to adopt that. Tom Hipchin makes that motion.
Mary Beth Hefner seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Andy and Alexandra. Thank you. Motion passes. May I have a motion on the definition of outbound telephone survey and fulfillment and changing the title of outbound telephone survey and fulfillment to call center services dash outbound as written on page 16?
We have the same issue with the language. Oh, make a motion to strike.
Make a motion to strike.
Strike service may be performed at the,
Okay, so Tom, you're making a motion to strike the sentence, services may be performed at the preferred source location or at the customer location. Is there any second? Michael Hurt? Any discussion? Dave?
Depending upon the type of surveys, is there any need or any, to require any kind of HIPAA language regarding them with the type of what's being discussed or how they're?
Adding HIPAA.
We did not include that because we believe that, whether HIPAA requirements apply or don't apply, that's going to be in the scope of services that's identified by the customer when they're seeking the services, and they would put in those requirements, and the preferred source would have to meet whatever those requirements are. And again, that's part of the form, function, and utility determination that's made up front. So we did not want to put that in because there may be other restrictions that customer agencies have, and the more you put in, the harder it is to say it was or was not included.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to amend the current definition on page 16. Did we get a second? Oh, we did get a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed, Charlotte, oh, sorry, 3. 3 opposed, Charlotte, Jerry, and Lisa Brooks. Abstentions? Andy Burchard and Alexandra Green. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, we have another motion. Motion to adopt the definition of the amended outbound telephone survey and fulfillment, the change of title to call center services outbound amended definition. Tom, are you motioning?
yes, I'll motion.
Thank you, Tom Hipchen. Ron Romano, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 1, Andy Burchard. Motion passes. Let's see. 45, you want to do one? Let's see.
Just 2 more left.
Okay, all right. We did 2 more, okay. Motion on the definition of electronic assembly as written on page 18. Michael Hurt,
Move to approve.
seconded by Ron Tascarella. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Michael, you're opposed?
No, I thought.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Abstention? Motion passes. Sorry about that. Last one. This is the last one for today. Motion on the definition of kit assembly and maintenance as written on page 19. Sonia motions. Is there a second? Tom Hipchen seconds. Any discussion? Go ahead, Michael.
Specifically, this definition, kit assembly and maintenance, you know, for us, it also applies to some of the furniture that we manufacture. Some of those parts come in kits. So I'm a bit concerned about this language, the way it's written. I'm just trying to find that one sentence in here. This service may include fulfillment of multiple kits, packed and shipped, finished kits, storing, assembly kits, future assembly, pleasant use of smart kits. I'm not sure that I would call this a service per se. It says this service may include the assembly of 2 or more. I think for preferred sources that work with components, it's not really a service. They work with their partners and or manufacturers to put those kits together as an end product, and I would not consider the assembly of kits necessarily a service.
This is already an approved service for both New York State Industries for the Disabled and the New York State Preferred Source Program for people who are blind or visually impaired. CoreCraft, you know, any impact this may potentially have on CoreCraft. CoreCraft itself isn't approved, is not authorized under the Procurement Stewardship Act or Section 162 of the state finance law to provide services as a preferred source offering. So we're not, you know, and again, we're not saying that you can't do what you do and that you can't do assembling of items together. We're just defining what it is that the blind and the disabled are currently providing as a service, as a preferred source service.
And I appreciate that clarification. Unfortunately, I think once this document is completed and goes forward to the assembly and whomever is going to make it part of, quote, direction for utilization of preferred sources, that word service in there could be misconstrued when we do assemble and put things together. If CoreCraft is not a, quote, entity that can provide services as a preferred source, those kits that we assemble do have this definition of service. And if I'm a outside state agency, I can question whether or not CoreCraft can provide that chair to me because it is a service and not an end product. So my concern is with that word this being in the category. And I know that we're just cleaning up, but that this is an issue.
Can I?
When an agency is purchasing a chair from CoreCraft or a table, I mean, they're purchasing a commodity. The commodity has already been approved. How that commodity was created, manufactured, assembled. Again, we don't look behind that as far as commodities. You know, if you have approval to sell a chair, you have approval to sell a chair, however it is manufactured. But Tom, you were going to say something?
I was just trying to understand Michael's concern, because I would think, as what you just said, you're approved to sell the furniture. How it becomes that furniture is not in question. But you think that, are you thinking that that's affecting, that this definition is affecting your ability to sell the commodity?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's a point of clarity here that we need to make. There may be an occasion, and there have been occasions, when we provide products to customers that are, quote, unassembled as purchased. And we assemble those products for the customer at their site. For example, if a customer buys shelves from us, correct? The shelves don't come assembled. They come disassembled as a, quote, kit with pieces and screws. When they arrive at the customer, we assemble those for the customer. They may have looked at a picture of a shelf in our catalog, but it does come as a, quote, unquote, kit that gets assembled by Correctional Industries. So my concern is, again, having this language indicate that this is the assembly of kits is a service can create problems for us.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
I kind of put a different spin on it. I think it is a service, but I think we should probably table this so that some additional language could be added to make sure that it doesn't impact negatively on Corecraft.
Is it, would anyone like to do a motion to do that? So Charlotte puts forth a motion to table this for clarification with the work group. Second, Michael beat you to it, Jerry. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstention? So the definition will be tabled for further clarification. Oh, yep, okay. So I think the rest of the definitions will be tabled till September. I appreciate it, again, if everyone could take a second look and send your comments in. And as well, the work group will get in touch with people for further clarifications on the definitions that we decided to table. Again, hopefully for reintroduction in September, but thank you. This was a good job. I'd like to now call up Corey Heritage, who will be discussing the mail fulfillment services application by NYS. So thank you, Corey. Oh, let me get that for you.
All right, it looks like it's warming up here, so I'll start. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Corey Heritage, and I'm with New York State Industries for the Disabled. I'm here to present the application for mail fulfillment services, as laid out in the packets that you have before you. If you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to ask. Although I do have some time set aside, it's not going to take the full half hour for discussion afterwards, so please be comfortable with that. The application you have before you today truly isn't a new service by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a new offering by NYSED's member agencies. In fact, it's a service that's been offered by NYSED member agencies for over 25 years. What this application is looking to accomplish really is to put under the current heading capabilities and offerings that allow member agencies to continue the current services they're doing today, utilizing in the marketplace today, utilizing the newest technology and the newest advancements in the industry. See if I can go forward here. There we go. This really captures what we're looking to do. Very simply, we are looking to perform mail fulfillment services utilizing 21st century technology so we can accept all items to be mailed in whatever format customers would like to deliver them to us. Particularly, NYSED member agencies want to be able to accept items to be mailed in any format, whether it be digitally or hard copy coming in boxes of letters and things of that nature. The intent has and is to be able to take a finished item and mail it. It is not to create a new item or help in production or design in any way. Simply put, it is not graphic design or print layout. This is taking a finished item and producing it for the sole purpose of mailing it. I think that's a key point in all of this. All of this, the end product is always simply to do mail fulfillment. As you can see, this isn't a new definition. This current service that we have has many of these items already in it. Folding, inserting, metering, finishing, all of the things that we've been doing for the last 25 years. The only one that is now is an identifiably different would be production. As you can see, NYSED is looking to have this approved because of the fact that we have met the council's desire and requirement that we can offer this statewide. We have member agencies that can cover every part of the state and currently doing this service. These are some of the NYSED members that are currently providing this service. This is not new, as you can see, to any of them. We have folks up there for over 30 years. We have Center for Disability Services, right here in Albany, FedCap down in New York City, Southeast Works out in Western New York, Washington Warren Albany County ARC, again here in Albany, and Westchester County ARC down in Westchester. As you can also see, right now on these projects, we have over 200 individuals with disabilities currently working. NYS is looking to have this application approved to ensure that the current over 200 people working on these mail fulfillment services can continue their employment in the service sector and can also provide new opportunities in the future. The national average for employment for individuals with disabilities, of all disabilities, is only 34%. New York, we're below that average. New York also has the distinction of being the 4th largest disabled population in the nation. To see the stark contrast, individuals within New York State classified without disabilities are employed at a rate of 74%. Those with disabilities are employed at a rate of 33%. Oftentimes, the first bias individuals with disabilities have to deal with is that, can they do the work? Are they able? I'd like to show the council a short video that will clearly demonstrate that not only can the individuals working at NYSED member agencies do the work, they thrive and they excel in it. So it's a 5-minute clip. I'd like to just show it to you real quickly here.
For over 25 years, the center has provided mailing services to New York State agencies. We currently provide employment to over 250 individuals with disabilities in an integrated work setting. Over the last 3 years, we have improved and upgraded our mailing facility to provide full service capabilities for our customers. From reproduction, inserting, sorting, and general mail fulfillment. Many of our customers are New York State agencies that we serve through the Preferred Source program. We invested in our future based on reproduction being an approved Preferred Source offering. Now we are in jeopardy of losing everything. Your decision as to whether or not we can provide reproduction along with our mailing services will decide our future.
We are in the copying/reproduction all the way to mailing out millions of envelopes a year, millions. So in a given day, this crew will probably stuff anywhere from 5,000 up to, some days we even get more than 10,000 manual envelopes in, all about turnaround. And we've been doing it for 20 plus years. Just people with disability workforce is over half our workforce here. They're just like anyone else. They're just like a normal worker. They want to work.
I know that they all love coming here every day more than most people. They really enjoy the sense of independence that they get. They love to earn a paycheck just like anybody else would. But they also like to show that they can also contribute to society in multiple ways.
It really helps me support everything I want to do, and I'm able to get out in the community because of this job, because I have the money to help support my activities and everything I like to do. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, they're dedicated. They don't miss much. They get their ups and downs with health and some things keep them back, but for the most part, they're here as scheduled.
It gives them a sense of responsibility, just like everybody else. You know, they come into work and they realize that they have to be professional and that they have expectations.
We really need this work. It's highly important that we have a good quality of life, so please get us work.
I really love my job, and I wouldn't do nothing without it.
Every year we get a little bit of a bump in volume. Almost all the state work has a manual component to it that we take in. We need these guys to do that because it has to get out the day we get it. We have to have these guys working on that. You take that away,
At first it can be difficult to explain the steps, but when they have a certain routine established with DSS, that they know they need these specific envelopes and this specific tray. So it's really good for people that need more consistency in every day.
I do DSS, and I fold return envelopes.
We work on the Department of Social Services contract, we work on the NYS contract, which is the New York State Insurance Fund, and right now I'm currently doing a job for the court.
The record, good. I'm so tired. I can see if you can do it.
We would wish this would stay as a true preferred vendor. We think this is a perfect fit for our workforce. The work and our workforce are almost like a perfect marriage. These guys are capable of doing it. The constant is these guys like the work, they like the paycheck. They want, they all have, just like you and me, they all have outside interests that need money.
Oh, it helps me out a lot because I help my mom with the bills and the household duties. So it's very important for me not only to have a job for that, but just for a good sense of self-worth to do something on a daily basis.
I like to work hard. It feels great.
It makes an incredible difference in their lives that I've never seen people that are more happy to come to work every day than the people that I work with here. They want to be here and they want to be busy the entire time they're working because they really want to earn every cent of their paycheck. This gives them the real sense of independence as adults they want and they deserve.
We're good people, we're all hard workers, and anything that you give us will be done in a prompt and in an accurate manner.
Please take a moment to understand just how valuable these jobs are to people with disabilities. Your decision will decide their future.
So I think that gives you a... Again, I think that gives you a good understanding of what we're already doing and what is already being done by our member agencies. I'd like to introduce Ron Patterson from the Center for Disability Services here in Albany, as well as Joe Scorza and Rich Wiley, also here from the Center for Disability Services, who just want to take a quick moment and tell you sort of what it is that they're doing and what this job and continuing the service and bringing it to the 21st century would allow them to do moving forward.
Hi, thank you for letting us speak today. We appreciate it. I'm just going to reiterate a couple of things that Corey said, and then I'm going to let two of our top employees have a little talk with you. Getting back to one of the points made earlier by council, security and document fulfillment. We're doing a job for the Department of Health right now, and one of the big things is the chain of custody and the chain of command of that document. So allowing us to do this and receiving this digitally allows us to provide that service for our customers and our clients. So moving forward in the future, if we're not allowed to do that, it's going to be difficult for us to offer these things for everybody that we do work for now. So nothing really is changing other than the fact that we receive it digitally and we put it through our system. And then we can track it and mail it. So having said that, a couple things I want to reiterate. We don't have any printing plates. We don't have any shells. We don't print on shells. And we have no ink. So we do no digital printing presses. We have no digital equipment that does that. We reproduce files that basically every one of us get every day, a PDF file that's sent to you, sent to everybody. You go to your copier/printer and you produce it. It's exactly what we want to do, and we want to perform for our clients that we have been doing business with for 25 years. So if we're not allowed to do that, that work is going to leave and go someplace else, and it'll probably go out of the state. So we're also trying to keep the business here in the state of New York, which I think everybody can agree that's very important to do as well. So I looked back at some of the minutes of some of the other Procurement Council meetings, and there was a comment made in there about just because we may or may not have a disabled person sweeping the floor, it doesn't necessitate them the permission to have a preferred contract. Well, I brought these two here today so they can actually tell you what they do for us and how important it is to them that we are allowed to have some advantage to get these contracts, because competing on a level playing field is just pretty difficult for us to do. So I want them to just give a brief talk on what they do, what their jobs are, and how important it is to them. And again, thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Joe Scorza. I've been with this center for 24 years, and some of the tasks I perform on a daily basis include inserting, labeling, and over the past 5 years, I've learned scanning. And in the video, I described how I help my mom pay the bills in my household. And if you took that away from me, you would not only be taking that away from me, but you'd be taking my quality of life away from me. And then I'd have nothing to do every day. And I would be home every day and I'd be doing nothing. And I don't feel that that's a very high quality of life.
My name is Rich Whaley. I've worked for the center for about 6 years now, and some of the things I do for them is I stuff DSS and I also fold DSS. I just learned how to do that, and you know, I'm pretty successful, and you know, I just want to tell you guys how important it is to have this work continue for not only me, but the future of the center and the future of people with disabilities that are going to come along in the future. And we need you guys to understand how important these contracts are, because if we don't have those, then like Joe said, we don't have a good quality of life. So I just want to say, you know, I hope you guys take that under advisement in the future, because we need these jobs just like you need your job every day. We need these jobs every day.
So thank you again, and I just want to reiterate, it's not our intention to put the little printers out of business or any of that stuff. We're just trying to do the work for these folks and keep them employed. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce quickly as well Lyle Ritchie from FedCap, again, one of our member agencies that is located down in New York City that is currently providing similar mail fulfillment services in today's marketplace to the preferred source.
Good afternoon, good morning. I'll be short. FedCap has been in operation for 80 years. We were founded with a mission for helping people with barriers and significant disabilities into jobs and moving towards economic independence. The work we do in mail fulfillment is a microcosm of what we saw from the Center for Disability Services. Our facility isn't as large, but the work is very much the same. We are working with HPD, Oath, DOHMH, Long Island Railroad, and we're primarily doing violations processing. Every day we get in mailings that need to be sent out, often within 24 hours. And we're getting an electronic file. We have to insert it. We have to do the error processing. There may be manual. And over the last 5 years, we've had to invest in automation. We've had to invest in inserters. We've had to invest in bigger copying machines just in order to support our customers and be able to turn around the information in the required amount of time. I'm really here on behalf of the people that are doing this work. Many of them, we have not been doing this for 25 years, but we've been doing this for well over a decade, and these are good jobs and they have opportunities. We've had individuals that have grown into lead positions, and we want to continue to do this work. And I guess that's key. We're not going out for something new. We're looking to continue work that we've been doing for over a decade. And thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your support.
I guess really what we're trying to say, and you may be asking the question, so what is this application? Why is this in front of you now versus what you're currently offering? The main reason is for years and years and years, state agencies, municipalities would send trucks or vans full of letters, full of summonses, full of whatever is going to be mailed out. It's not economical. It's not the way things are being done in the future. In fact, everything wants to be sent digitally. You shoot it out through a printer, and then you just mail it and do all the same activities and different job functions that you've seen here. We're asking that we be allowed to do that and to maintain the current workforce and grow that workforce in the mail services sector. I'd like to specifically, and a lot of you probably have already read it or looked at it, but as to the specific concerns raised by the OGS staff as a reason to potentially table this item, I'm happy to briefly give you some of those answers now. In the first bullet point, OGS is making the exact assertion, in fact, that we are making on this application, which is they are correct in stating customers do request document preparation, and in fact are moving almost exclusively to that end as technology has changed. With that change, NYS takes seriously what state finance law says against or about preferred sources, and that preferred sources should look to offer the services under, quote, efficient methods of procurement, production, performance, and administration. That's what we're looking to do. The application does give some pricing models and pricing that's already been previously approved by OGS, and going forward, all projects over $50,000 would still be required to have OGS price approval. The application does include job activities under every subsection of that list I gave you previously. So if you're looking to answer one of the questions as what is it, what are the job functions, where are there jobs for people with disabilities, under every subcategory we give a full, in your application, a full definition of what kind of job functions there are. And as to whether this will be additional individuals with disabilities employment opportunities, yes it will. But two things here. Those currently working oftentimes, like any other individual, will learn a marketable skill and move on to another opportunity. If the council doesn't approve this application, the opportunity to continue to backfill those positions with more people with disabilities in this 24th century marketplace and with customer requirements will go away. These changes will not, in theory, but in reality, limit and eliminate job opportunities for disabled individuals in the future. NYS, when reviewing the specifications of any opportunity, as we do now, will determine if these specifications meet the definitions. As to one of the parts of your application here that says digital printing or digital reproduction of these things or whatever being done is not going to ever go above the 25% threshold, in conjunction with our member in reviewing specifications, we will be able to determine the functions necessary for this job. And if those functions are more than 25% of the cost, we would not be doing that. We would decline the opportunity and give the requesting agency a release. And all projects, regardless of size, are required NYSID members to do a full cost analysis. We have to see where every dollar is being spent. This will be another safeguard into knowing whether or not we're creeping up to that 25% threshold. And as previously stated, any project over $50,000 would still be going to OGS for their approval process, price approval. I believe through the presentation, NYSID has answered why its members would not be able to continue to provide these services if not approved. OGS in the first bullet also answered that question, that this is a changing marketplace. This service has and is continuing to move towards a more user-friendly and technologically advanced service sector. To ensure NYSID's members' opportunities, many of which are the same opportunities that they currently enjoy, NYSID members have to evolve with the marketplace. Just like in one of the other services we offer in janitorial services, we're not walking around with a canister vacuum any longer. We use backpack vacs. We use cordless vacs. It is efficient technology to get the job done. It makes us cost competitive and allows us to do the job in an efficient manner. As to the letter from the PIA that has some concerns, simply put, this is not an application for digital printing, nor is it an attempt to provide new services that our members are not already able to offer now. And if at any point NYSID or its members would like to get back into the digital printing arena as a standalone service, we'd have to come back to this body anyways. This is very simply being able to continue the work we're doing now and be able to, instead of take a physical letter sent to us or brought to us or couriered to us, print it off our printer and be able to put it into an envelope, sort it, and mail it. I respectfully ask that the council to consider the application for what it is and applications simply move a current preferred source into today's changing marketplace and ensure that the jobs currently being filled by people with disabilities don't go away or are not offered to them in the future. I ask the council to consider voting today so as to not leave this population in limbo for the next 4 months as it's tabled for a working group. What happens if there are new opportunities during those 4 months? What happens if a current contract expires and comes up for renewal? These are opportunities that will not be there after the end of these 4 months. I want to thank the council for their time today. I want to thank the NYSED members who are here, and especially the employees at the NYSED members who eloquently and passionately gave their opinions on what these jobs mean and how they affect theirs and their colleagues' lives. I request that the council approve this application so that these individuals and many more in the years to come get an opportunity to be trained and employed in this service that has been a preferred source for over 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. This is the time for any comments from the council or any questions for Corey. Oh, go ahead, Sonia.
Oh, is this on?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
you're good.
I just noticed right at the beginning of the application, it says that agencies require kind of the complete turnkey solution. My understanding was that they could use separate mailing and printing. It just, do you mean it's just perhaps not as economical?
So just like you've been talking about on a number of things, there's a form function utility capacity here. And what will happen is a state agency will just write an RFP or write a spec that says this is what they want. We want to be able to respond to those. If a state agency would like to break it out and do printing on one side and do the mailing on the other, fine, we'll just take the mailing. That's absolutely fantastic. But the problem is because the economic side of it, because the efficiency side of it, that's just not what we're seeing as much anymore.
Okay, and one more question. I know that the digital printing was an issue a few years ago when the application came up. And under the added document production, it does include 25, if it's less than 25% digital printing?
I guess, again, the digital printing is somewhat of a nebulous statement. It would mean not having a hard copy and photocopying. It would mean taking a digital file, a PDF, a Word document, and printing it. That has been sort of encompassed into that digital printing, and so that's what we mean by that. It does not mean doing shells. It does not mean doing plates. It simply means that part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Michael?
Michael.
Go ahead.
Has NYSED been negatively impacted from a financial perspective since not being allowed to participate and do printing?
As of right now, before the definitions were flushed out and it was just a heading, oftentimes OGS in overviewing our contracts would have the broadest view of what mail services would. And so it would include oftentimes some of these items. As that has changed over the last few years and as these definitions that were in front, I know some of them tabled, but they've made it more clear that if it has that printing component, yes. And so there was, in fact, one large job just about 6 months ago with the Department of Health that was to go through preferred source, and unfortunately it was rejected because it had that component, very small component. Now, thankfully, the center was able to secure that through a sole source, but only for a year when the customer wanted to have a 5-year contract. So yes, absolutely, it has been affected even today.
So again, my question was, what the financial impact? Can you share that with us?
So sure. So with somebody like the center who's invested literally hundreds of thousands of dollars into equipment to maintain and be efficient, a lot of those would stand idle when it comes to this. Now, again, this is not their only book of business, but to Ron's point, in the competitive marketplace where it can be very difficult, this is substantial to them. So the financial impact, the investment made by all of our member agencies is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this equipment would not be able to be utilized moving forward if this was not allowed.
So perhaps my question wasn't clear.
Okay.
How much money have you lost since you are not able to do printing as a preferred source? NYSED, not your partners, NYSED lost.
Well, NYSED is a very small part of it. NYSED obviously is only 4% of the value of the contract, and in this particular industry, it doesn't include any of the postage. So it's a very, very minor. NYSED itself, the impact is not great, but that's not our concern. The concern is the jobs lost and the jobs that would be lost moving forward through our member agencies.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
I'd just like to clarify that single source, the 1-year single source contract you mentioned, The Controller's Office approved that contract because by the time the situation was clarified, the need for the mail fulfillment was urgent, but we didn't approve a long-term contract, and we wouldn't because I think the council may see that as getting around the council's decision on digital printing.
Right, absolutely right. Go ahead, Ron.
Getting back to your point, yes, we're going to lose about $8.3 million because we cannot do that as a preferred source.
Well, then I guess I have to ask a rebuttal question and make sure I'm clear. You indicated that there was only one thing that changed for NYSID in terms of providing the services, and that one thing was your inability to print. Is that correct?
To produce the items to be mailed, to actually physically produce them, not create them, to produce them.
So please define produce. Is that print, or is that like making paper mache, or?
No, yeah. So you get in a file either through an FTP or through a PDF or through a Word document, and it is to send it to the printer and print it out.
So the only thing that's changed is your ability to print it out.
Correct.
And you lost $8 million because you can no longer print it out.
Because we couldn't go after that as a preferred source opportunity, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So Corey, in terms of the printing, when you get this electronically, you're not in any way creating anything. So
we're not modifying, creating, or designing anything.
So when letters are going out, they're already set up, customized to the person. You're just printing it out.
Correct. So it would have a change, obviously, if a person's name would be different on every letter, but the letter itself is a static letter.
But they're sending you a list of people plus the letter, and you're doing the word.
And you just merge it. Correct.
And printing that. And you're not creating any type of flyer or anything.
Absolutely not.
Oh, sorry.
So can we? I'm sorry. Can we address a couple of the issues that OGS presented? The first is that you say that you don't have enough pricing information to be able to determine the reasonableness of cost for the proposal. But isn't that something you do on an ongoing basis as new projects are presented to you? Isn't that typically how that happens?
Pricing does come, but whenever there has been a new service or commodity that has been approved by the council, we've done the price reasonableness at the beginning. There was pricing provided for FedCap. There was no pricing provided for Center for Disability Services or anyone else. And as you know, there's no competition to determine what is the reasonableness of pricing. So if we had gotten in pricing from all 5 of the members, we'd be able to even, look at those to determine the reasonableness of pricing, and that wasn't provided.
So I'm a little confused because if you don't believe that you have a complete application, I'm not sure why or how we could approve it. Is it possible that we can approve it contingent upon you getting the pricing information that you need and finding it to be reasonable?
It's up to the council as to what type of a motion that it would approve. One thing, I just would like to address on behalf of the Procurement Council staff and the review that we had conducted of the application was not limited solely to letters where the content of the letter remained static, and the only thing that was changing is the names. That is not how this application was presented to the Office of General Services or to the State Procurement Council. It was for all types of mailing that would go out. So because it wasn't limited to just letters, it's far more reaching, and that's why we would need the different types of pricing for the different types of documents, postcards, calendars, newsletters from school districts that potentially would be mailed out.
So again, is it possible or appropriate for the Procurement Council to, if they were to vote and accept the proposal, for those things to be worked out later? Because the Procurement Council isn't necessarily agreeing to pricing, correct? They're just agreeing to the offering of the particular service as a preferred source offering.
I think it's, I mean, again, I think it's only fair to the council that they have a sense of pricing of the service. Just like any service, we would ask, what is your expectation of a price for a letter or a calendar or a brochure?
Okay. And then the other issue is that you state that you're not able to determine the value-added labor by persons with disabilities. And so there was no information, or you had incomplete information, and can NYSED speak to that then? Because I think that's always been our primary concern, is that the work that we offer as a preferred source offering really truly go to disabled individuals. So maybe NYSED could speak to that?
Absolutely. Twofold. Number one, if you look on the production, all of those listing of jobs, folding, inserting, those are all jobs being performed by people with disabilities, as well as at any point, we've always offered OGS to come out and see what's currently being involved. This work as being, I mean, look, when you print a letter, the printing is being printed. I mean, it's a piece of technology is doing that. But the person loading the machine, the person taking them off, that's all being done by the individuals with disabilities. We would absolutely be able to meet our ratios of the 75% for traditional members, the different ratios for a partnership. But with this, we've been doing it already. And as I said, whether it be listing out every job function, you can see all the job functions below. There isn't a job function in the categories we gave you. I believe there's about almost 2 pages of it that an individual with disability cannot be trained to do. These are real jobs, and these are jobs that the best part about them is that they are marketable, and you will have people move through, and that's really the goal, is to really move them even off of preferred source contracts into competitive employment.
So I think another issue that was presented was that the printing industry was concerned about NYSED getting a monopoly. And it seemed to me that if it was limited in scope to only 25% of the value of mailing services, or 25%, I'm not sure mathematically what that works out, but 25% of the value of the whole contract, that certainly is no monopoly. It seems to be simply a small portion of the market. I don't know that there's really been analysis of that, of what portion of the market there is, and I'm questioning whether anybody has done any such analysis.
So we looked at Open Book, and we looked at some of the opportunities that are out there. Again, if a specification came out for design or creation of brochures, or I think they even put in the I Love New York, this is only mailing. And so we are getting finished product to us that we just produce. So we would not be even dipping our toe into the whole creation of those kinds of things. As far as a full-scale analysis, it's hard to say, because it's hard to see how things are identified always within the Open Book and things of that nature, because people may classify them differently. But we did our best, and we looked at it. It's a sizable market, but even currently, we only identified, I think, 12 current contracts that we would look at. We're doing one of them. 3 are being done by out-of-state companies, and the rest are just being done by other entities. So it's not a massive thing.
Okay. And the last thing,
can I just respond to that as well? That is one of the reasons why the recommendation was to send it back to the work group, was because we did not have sufficient time to do the analysis of how would we quantify, and how would NYSED quantify that 25% of the production of the full mail fulfillment contract. We don't think that there's sufficient information in there, and we wouldn't know how to do that benchmarking and analysis when one of the applications was submitted to OGS, and we wanted to bring in representatives from the Printing Industries Alliance and possibly from agency print rooms, and get more of that information so that we would be able to, approve them as they're presented to us.
Charlotte?
Yeah, I agree with Noreen about the 25%, but not only how do you manage the 25%, but how did the 25% number come about in the first instance? What analysis was done to decide that that was the right number? And also, I'd like to know NYSED's intention with respect to corporate partners.
Intention how?
Do you intend to use corporate partners for this printing?
Currently in mailing services, we do have, I believe, 2 corporate partners doing mailing services. I would assume that, as with any service sector that we are in, it's legislatively mandated that we allow for corporate partners when necessary, or when a member agency can't fulfill it on their own or be cost competitive. So there may be the opportunity to work with them in the future. Our intent right now, and what we're looking for affects directly the individual members that are doing this currently. The 25% really came in, to be very candid, came in consultation in preparing this with both our members as far as, what is it really doing, our staff, as well as with OGS staff, as far as that I understand quantifying it, or how do you figure that out, but the number 25%, that's where that came from. And the quantification really has to do with cost. It's not, is it 25% of the effort? It's really cost, because sometimes you're literally just printing just a letter, and it may even be, even the addresses aren't, you're getting different labels for the address, so it's just a letter, but the state agency doesn't want to send you 10,000 letters. They want to send you one PDF file that says, to consumer or to state, So it's just being able to do that. And so we looked at it and said, when it gets to be above that 25%, generally then you're doing creation and you're doing other types of design work. That is not what we want.
I think the council may like to see that analysis.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alex? Sorry, Michael.
So I think this question is more pointed to the OGS staff. Assuming that the work group moves forward, will that analysis include potential impact on the private sector, and looking at, based on the comments that have come in, and with a specific focus on small businesses, SDVOBs, and MWBEs, and also how it could impact state agencies that provide certain services, such as OGS, and even say the DTF Green Island plant?
Yes, they will all be part of the work group. In fact, Christine McCann, ESD, that is part of what she does.
And to clear up that one point too, if it's a state agency currently doing it themselves, that's not a procurement. They're going to do it, and if they're going to utilize other state agencies, that's, again, we wouldn't play in that spectrum at all. We're only talking about when a state agency or municipality makes a decision, or SUNY makes a decision that they can't find another state agency in themselves to do it and needs to procure this outwardly. That's the only time we would be involved.
So just a follow-up question to that. So for example, say if, just to clarify, say if DOL needs a quick turnaround on a job, utilizes DTF's facilities, and DTF provides DOL with a bill?
Yeah. Have nothing to do with us
That would
whatsoever.
continue.
That's still
Nope.
internal?
Agency to
Okay.
agency.
Nope, that's absolutely, and again, we are happy to always have those discussions about how they affect, and it's why our scope is so limited to begin with, whether it be all of our service offerings or even this one in particular. We understand that there is going to be an impact to someone, or potential impact to someone, but the fact is, this program, this legislatively mandated program, is put in place because there was a decision made that there is a group of individuals who have such a difficulty finding employment that this is one way to do that. This is a social program, that it absolutely is. And so there could be some impact, but again, it's why we are so careful and so limited in our scope. We really try not, we're not trying to take off more than we can chew. Number one, we want to do a good job. And then number two, we also want to make sure that it has a limited impact. Absolutely. I think somebody else had a question. Michael?
Michael, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, any further comments?
I have one.
I'm sorry, we'll finish any further comments, sorry. Questions and comments. Oh, we have more. Okay, go ahead.
I have a comment. I'm from Empire State Development. We want to know, what is document production? I know that it's, what documents will you be doing? Is it just letters? Is it pamphlets? Is it booklets? What, I need more, Empire State needs more definition on what a document is going to be.
I would be careful simply saying letters, because it could be, somebody could really narrowly define, and everybody, OGS has always been very good about making sure you have a broader definition, or not try to write a spec that precludes people. But it would be summonses, it would be letters, but it is not calendars. It is not production materials that are, booklets and stuff like that. Now, it could involve, some sort of postcard type thing, but it's not full pamphlets. These are individual items to be mailed that are really just utilizing individual addresses and things of that nature. It is very limited in that scope.
Sonia?
This is just more of a general comment, as I know we're wrapping up here. I know that I would have to agree with OGS that more analysis and impact statements need to be made available. Not only the fact that this could negatively impact some of the smaller printing companies, but a lot of them also employ people with disabilities and veterans who could also be possibly at risk of job loss. Again, I think just a little more needs to be done on the impact of what adding document production would do to the printing industry.
And I think in particular with that, when it comes to the folks who may be utilized currently, I think if you got an honest assessment, it's very limited as far as what's being done there. And number two, a lot of it's being done at the production facilities of a tradition of a not-for-profit agency. A lot of those may not or could not be available in the future because of some of the other changes with closing of sheltered workshops and things of these nature. These jobs, these folks become employed for this purpose to work on these kinds of items. So I think the greater impact on the people who would gain opportunities far outweighs the limited scope that may have.
Thank you. Any further questions for Corey?
Michael?
Oh, we can still talk. I just didn't want to.
So, I mean, you brought up the number about the $8 million unable to bid on those type of procurements. So, out of those type of procurements, how much of that production would you have to have outsourced to a partner or to a for-profit entity? Is that
if we could do it as we want to do it now,
right?
None of it. Now, we have some partners in some locations. For example, out in Syracuse, we don't have a traditional member who is doing this kind of work on their own, so they work with a partner. But here, the center, no, that would all be done by the center, 100%. FedCap, similarly, they're a little smaller, but it's similarly. So our members who do this service are doing it on their own. The ones who do have partners do it a little bit differently, where they utilize the partner. But again, that's unique too, because I mean, much to the point that I think Sonia was asking, those people go on that corporate partner's payroll. They get the same benefits and opportunities as any other individual employed by them.
And just for OGS, I mean, again, in the memo to the Procurement Council that, to Mary Beth's point, if you don't have sufficient information, I don't know how the expectation of the Procurement Council being able to vote on it at this point to accept the application or not. Just more of a protocol kind of a thing. So if the application is incomplete, how could it be presented to the council to approve?
Okay. Oh, I don't know if
just to respond to that, and that is why the OGS recommendation was to send it to a work group, because we did feel that the application was incomplete and that there was a lot of open questions. We did want to ask, rather than me reading or Sue reading through the OGS recommendations and our points, has everyone had an opportunity to review that? We want to make sure that before there's any type of a vote on the application, that people have had that opportunity.
Yes, I have a question about one of the staff findings. It talks about that the staff didn't feel that the application sufficiently explained why the current members cannot do what they're doing, but they would need a change in the definition. So did you go back to NYSID for a response? They did not respond, or where is that in terms of, because it seems like OGS is saying you can do this under the current definition, and NYSID is saying we can't, and they were not able to sufficiently explain to you why not. Have you asked them for more information?
We did not ask that. I mean, just to clarify, mail fulfillment services is not currently an approved preferred source offering. That's a title on the list, and as a result of reviews of some applications that were coming in under the title of mailing services, that's where it was discovered that there was this production printing component that was being included when the approved services were the collating, the sorting, the inserting, the on-site and off-site mailroom services, and the pre-sort all classes. Those types of mailing services have been approved.
Right.
So we are trying to seek clarification. Is it just, again, is it just the printing component that really is being sought here, but wrapped up into one big service title offering? So we had, as Corey had said, OGS had numerous discussions with NYSID and with the Center for Disability Services and their representatives for a number of months. And this is the application that they then submitted in response to our inquiry, and we still felt that there were holes.
And I think as well, I mean, Tom, to that point, I mean, we, as I said, we've applied for this, back in April, and some of these information we could do on the fly and get that information, but we as well saw the staff recommendations just yesterday. So and until that point, we really hadn't had an opportunity to clarify or to make changes in order to get it to be a more complete package to be brought for a vote today, unfortunately.
Any further questions for Corey? Thank you, Corey.
I really
Appreciate
thank
it.
you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Just do the motion.
I think Michael was going to make a motion.
Oh. Is there a motion on the application for mail fulfillment services for NYSED?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, what would you?
I move to support the recommendation of staff that a work group be established to obtain sufficient information. In deference to NYSED, I think they deserve the opportunity to provide specific information so this can move forward positively, and I think referring it back to a work group is the appropriate step to take.
So your motion is to, in a sense, table it and send to a work group for further clarification and information?
In keeping with OGS staff recommendation that a work group be established and this matter be tabled until such time as OGS and NYSED can present the document again with the appropriate responses.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, Jerry Minot, Chairman, seconds. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to just ask a question about what that process would look like. I think we've already discussed a little bit here that there is a major project that NYSED is working on with the State Department of Health. We're reaching the end of the one-year period. I think it ends in August. I'm not certain, but I think it's in August. So if we do move this to a work group, in essence, this won't come before the Procurement Council until September. So that's in essence a decision that they will no longer have this line of business because we cannot make a preferred source offering to them for that work, and it's been made clear to us that we cannot make a single or sole source offering to them for that work. So I would ask just whether there's an opportunity for the work group, if they do meet and this is resolved fairly quickly, is there any opportunity for this to come to the Procurement Council any earlier than the September meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly consider that. We'd have to have quorum. Again, I would look to the council also. It would be all of us. So would that be something that you would be open to?
Well, I think we have to pass the motion before we can get to the topic, correct?
I don't know, do we, or do we just, we're in discussion, so, okay.
In terms of a meeting, are teleconference votes permitted for the?
In terms of a meeting and getting a quorum, teleconference is not, however, video conferencing is. The Procurement Council addressed that issue a number of years ago and determined that, a quorum could be obtained through video conferencing as long as all of the members can see each other. That would be permissible, so we could certainly look into that. Another thought is there a way historically DOH, again, would have someone else print out the documents that then would be delivered to Center for Disability Services to do the mailing portion of it. I mean, I don't know if that's a possibility in the procurement that you're talking about.
It is, but like was mentioned, that would then require a significant amount of shipping costs to move the documents to the preferred source mailing site. This is a mailing to every Medicaid participant in the state, so it's quite a significant volume mailing.
I think, I understand your position, but I think it's probably unrealistic to expect that the work group does their job and then the council gets together in time for you to have time to bid out the printing or bid out the whole thing, should you have to.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I'll speak directly to that. I think it was, in my head anyway, the plan that we would begin a bidding process but that we would perhaps abandon that if there was an opportunity to make a preferred source offering instead. But we have no choice at this point but to begin a bidding process.
Okay, so we'll have we'll do Michael's motion first, and then we'll take up your motion after that vote.
Well, hers wasn't a motion.
Oh, hers wasn't a motion, but it can be right after. Could be, yes. Thank you. So Michael made the motion, Jerry seconded. Any further discussion? Yeah, so this is the motion to table it to a work group. No further discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And then if she does she want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm not sure what a reasonable period of time would be, so maybe that could be discussed. But I'll make a motion that that the Procurement Council meet again in 45 days after the work group has completed their research. So that puts a lot of pressure on the work group, but that would be the motion that I would make.
I'd second it.
So there's a motion on the table to have the work group work and get back together with the Procurement Council in 45 days. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom Hipchen, second.
Was that the motion, or was the motion that the council would get together 45 days after the work group finished their work?
No, it was that the work group finished their work in time for the council to meet in 45 days.
All right, we need to have a clarification, because I thought that is what the motion was. So can you restate what your motion is?
My motion is that the Procurement Council meet again in 45 days, and that the work group complete its work in time for that meeting so that we can take a vote at that time.
We would need a second on that.
I second that.
All right, and that's Tom, and then we would need discussion. Just one comment on behalf of the Procurement Council staff. I mean, we keep calling it OGS, but, again, we are the Procurement Council staff. It's not OGS as an agency making these decisions. We're working on behalf of all of you members. Just keep in mind that, we can make this motion and go forward with it, but if there's not a quorum, the meeting cannot be held, or would not be held. Just, keeping that in mind. So any other discussion on that motion?
Yep, go ahead.
Just, if we're going to meet in 45 days, I just want to make sure that we also have sufficient time to review the documentation prior to the meeting.
Okay. Well, no, I was just going to say, again, as Noreen said, we're the staff to the Procurement Council, and we will do our best, but this is a group effort, so everyone would need to be part of this, come to the meetings, bring your information, because it's a lot to do to get the documents ready to go back out to everyone and schedule the meeting in 45 days, so I just want to note that. Any further comments or discussion? Okay. All in favor? Oh, sorry, read off the names. I'm sorry. All in favor, Tom Hipchen, Mary Beth, Lisa Brooks, Jerry Minot Sherman, Dave Russo, Christine McCann, right? Nope.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sorry, Christine. Opposed? Opposed, we have Alexander Green, Michael Hurt, Charlotte Davis, Sonia Lindell, Lisa Davis, thank you. Anyone over here? Nope. Abstentions? Andy Burchard. How many in favor? Jessica?
May I ask a question? Sorry.
I've got 6 in favor, if my math is correct.
Go ahead.
Six members voted in favor. There are 13 members that are present. For a motion to be passed, it needed to be approved by a majority. Since there's only 6, that motion does not carry.
Can I ask a clarification? Am I allowed to vote on this?
Yes.
Let's revote. Why don't we revote? Would that be helpful, ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. All right, so this is the 45-day motion. All in favor? I have Tom Hipshin, Mary Beth Hefner, Ron Tascarella, Ron Romano, Lisa Brooks, Jerry Minot Sherman, Dave Russo. 7. Opposed? Alexander Green, Michael Hurt, Charlotte Davis, Sonia Lindell, and Lisa Davis. Abstentions? Andy Burchard.
I'm sorry?
That was 7. I think it's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We have 7. 7 move to adopt. That motion will carry.
Abstained. Okay, great. Okay, so OGS will be in touch with many of you and some other stakeholders to develop a work group and work very hard over the next 40 days or so. Before we end today, I would like to thank Jessica Paul, Noreen Van Doren, Christine Irvine, and the other staff at OGS for pulling all of this together in such an organized manner. It was very helpful and a lot of work from them. And finally, I'd also like to thank Sarah Lafayette and Sarah G., who keep us all organized as well every Procurement Council meeting. I hate to do this at the last minute, but I have one more thing I would like to bring to the council members. I have been approached about adding public comment to these meetings. And since, again, I act, again, as just staff to the Procurement Council, I feel it is not just my decision, but history for 20 years has been, there has been no public comment at the meetings. And what I mean by public comment is kind of like my school board meeting. People would sign in the back, be limited to about 2 minutes or so, and then do 10 minutes worth, and then people could sign in and you could have public comment at the end, whatever we would want to do if that's something we want to do.
Are you asking for comments at this time, or?
Yes.
I would suggest that I think that's a wonderful idea. We are a public entity, and the public should be aware and have an opportunity to speak. However, in deference to the work that the council does and the amount of time that we have allocated to this and the work that the OGS staff does, I think it would be a burden to allow an open mic, if you will, for people to just come in and speak. I think if the staff is considering this, and if the council is going to consider it, it needs to be done in an extremely organized fashion with specific limits on the amount of time people can speak and the time frame by which they can do that, or a council meeting could last until like 1:30.
We started late, though.
So that's my comment on that.
I would
go ahead.
I would suggest that it wouldn't be people allowed to sign up at the time. I think there should be a period of time before to be submitted to the council and what they need to speak about. Because I think it should be related to state procurement issues and not simply an open mic. So if there's, and I don't know the laws that govern this, but if we could have a point where someone needed to sign up by a certain time, not the day of the procurement council.
Yeah, looking back through the records of prior procurement council meetings, that was the discussion, and the discussion had been that, anyone that was a member of the public that was not a procurement council member or staff to the procurement council, they wouldn't be allowed to speak unless they were invited, and as you said, invited to speak, and what they were going to talk about was approved in advance. However, we've always accepted written comments and provided those written comments to the procurement council members. But again, we were approached to amend that process to see if we would just allow people to sign up the day of. Because what you're talking about is what's been done historically. If somebody, we have invited people to come and give presentations in the past.
Well, I'm saying if the person wants to speak, it's fine. It don't have to be approved, but there would be a deadline to sign up before procurement council. So it could be considered into the timing to address Michael's concern, and that the content was appropriate for the council.
Oh, go ahead, Charlotte.
To Michael's point about having to do this carefully, I think we also have to consider the procurement lobby law and how to make sure that we don't actually invite contractors to get in trouble with the procurement lobby law.
Go ahead, Ron.
Currently, I understand that the public is allowed to comment in written form, so I don't see why we would prohibit them from also being here in person and commenting verbally. So I think as long as, again, it's done carefully and pertains to the agenda that we're considering, that it be allowed.
I would just suggest that the OGS staff go back and look at the Sunshine Law. It is in place, and that Sunshine Law talks about lobbyists and contractors being able to speak to government agencies and quote unquote influence their decision making. So I think there's some work that you guys need to do first before we make a decision or discuss how that might move forward. I think we need a recommendation from staff.
Okay, so you're looking to OGS to propose a
I'm sorry, I'm looking for
policy?
Procurement Council staff, not OGS.
Okay, that's
So
what I wanted. So
yeah, I
you're
wanted to
looking-
clarify that. Yes,
Again,
thank
this
you.
is for us to talk about. So are you looking for us to develop something to propose to the council?
I am looking for something for council staff that wears two hats and does it very well, quite frankly, to come back with a recommendation to us as to how this could move forward. Thank you.
When you were approached, was it in a written form?
We have no approach. This was brought to me to bring to the council.
No, when you were approached, when someone approached you about that, was it in written form or was it informal? I'm wondering if what the person or people said, we should,
Couple ways. Some was via email, some was in person, so.
if you wanted to share that with
Well, it
the-
was just asked to speak. I mean, it wasn't as that detailed. And then, so what
Oh.
I'm bringing to the council is
Oh,
kind of what do
okay.
you, oh, I'm sorry. They were just asked to speak, and we have no policy. Just the policy in the history has been no public speaking, but they can write us in advance and be asked to add it to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
And if it's applicable, I think we have. I haven't been here that long, but this was more, is this something we want to do?
Can I ask, would it be limited to sort of the tail end of the agenda, or at any point during the agenda that someone wanted to stand up and speak? I'm not sure.
It would be whatever we want it to be. I mean, I can tell you on my school board, people sign in when they get there and we have the first 10 minutes, 2 minutes each speaker. So we only get through 5, and then there's public speaking at the end. And the same thing, we limit it to about 2 minutes each, about 10 minutes. So it's really whatever the Procurement Council would like to do as a policy.
It doesn't sound, Sue, like you've got something here. So can I make a recommendation that the council members respond back to this inquiry to you with some suggestions, and then you can
That'd be
compile
great.
that and then share that with the council members, and that way we can move this forward.
Yeah,
and,
that'd be great. If
come
you
up with
would
some
send me your
recommendations.
comments, and if you're looking for us to give some type of proposal for a policy, please let us know that as well in your notes to us. Okay, great. Do you need to do the preferred source? Okay. So the preferred source applications under OGS standing authority, there are none. Is there any other further open council discussion? Okay. In closing, our next meeting is probably not Wednesday, September 14th, 2016. We'll be in contact with everyone via the work group. And again, please, I hope you dedicate the time to meet the 45 days. Again, this is all of us together. And may I have a motion to end the meeting? Mary Beth Hefner, motion. Second, Jerry Minot Sherman. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Oh, all in favor? Yeah.